No.
Welcome to another episode of Pirkei Avot. We're going to start Mishna 15 from the first chapter, and as usual we'd like to dedicate this episode to Levy ben Moshe Esther and Elisheva Yael bat Leah. Okay, Michael, what have we got to say?
So in this Mishnah, we are going to. It's going to be attributed to Shammai, who was Hillel's kind of partner. Shammai was considerably younger than Hillel, and he, as we learned in a previous episode, once Hillel passed away, he was the Nossi, and they didn't appoint an Av Beis Din to sit alongside him because obviously Hillel was it was very hard to follow, and Shammai was obviously a very, very great rabbi as well. So they thought it was fitting for him to serve his stewardship alone, which was an honor. Because Shammai was a great person, a great rabbi.
There was also somebody called Menachem, I believe his name, Menachem or Menashe, I think it was Menachem, who was a contemporary of both Hillel and Shammai,
Okay.
who I suppose technically could have been a substitute for Hillel, but there was some controversy. He either he stepped down, he went into business or something, so that could have had some effect on something to do with the fact that Hillel was never replaced.
Okay. So if we look at the Mishnah, it says Shammai Omer. Shammai used to say, "Asay Torascha keva," make your study of the Torah a fixed practice. Omar me'at ve'asay harbe. Speak little but do much. V'hevi mekabel et kol ha'adam b'sever panim yafot, and receive all men with a pleasant countenance. So Shammai says three things. Firstly, he says your study of Torah should be a fixed practice. You should reserve time for Torah study. In fact, to make it your principal thing during the day. I think it's sometimes. I think probably a lot of people do this, but I think you should start learning. Start your learning early during the day, and let your other kind of the matters of whatever you do come after Torah. Don't leave Torah till the end of your day or like your working day or something. Try and do some learning before you start working.
Sure.
So it gives respect to your learning, and it's like it's the main thing of your day.
Also, when you're more alert when you wake up. At the end of the day,
absolutely. You can be exhausted by the end of the day of working, and you may say, you know what, I won't learn today. I'll learn tomorrow, and then tomorrow never comes. Do you know what I mean? So what does Rambam say about the Asay Torascha keva, make a permanent fixture of your studying? He says, and this is Rambam, he said to make Torah study the center and the main thing, and your others' affairs secondary to it, whether they turn up or whether they not turn up, since there is no damage from their absence. And they said in Baba Metzia, Daf 87 of an Aleph, the righteous say little and do much. Oh, this is talking about the Asay Omar Me'at v'Asay Harbe. I'll finish what Rambam has to say. The righteous say little and do much, like our father Avraham, who designated one loaf of bread and brought curds and milk and a calf. This we learn in Bereshis 18:8. And Rav Mashiach,
this is when Avram Avinu,
and it also says, and 3 seah of fine flour.
That's when Avram Avinu was in agony on the third day of his Brit Milah in Parshat Vayera, and he was desperate. He couldn't exist without doing chesed. For him, sitting and waiting for guests to come was an anathema for him. So he went out. First of all, he sent Eliezer to go and bring guests. Eliezer came back and said, "No, there's nobody out there. It's a boiling hot day." But then Avraham Avinu went himself. He found the guests, and then what did he do? He told them, "Yeah, I'm going to give you. Sit down. I'll give you a bit of water." And then after he said those he made those promises. I'll give you this and I'll give you that. A little bit of this, a little bit of that. He ended up giving massive portions, way above and beyond. Yeah, that's typical of. And also with Avraham Avinu, I was probably going to talk about Ephron.
Yes, yes, it is. I was hoping. Yes, and he continues. You're a genius. He goes and he says, "And evildoers say much and do not do even a little, like Ephron, who gave everything away in his words, but in practice did not even leave one small coin from the purchase price to please from Moshe." I was wondering what this meant.
So this is talking about when Avraham Avinu he attempted initially to purchase the field of Machpelah from Ephron. Ephron was the head of the Hittites.
Right.
And he only became the head of the Hittites on that day, by the way. He was a Gornish before then. And then they appointed him as leader on that day because Avraham Avinu was so important, not just to his own following, but worldwide. He was called the Prince of the Nations. All nations respected Avraham Avinu. So Avraham Avinu was not going to deal with somebody. Hashem didn't want Avraham Avinu to deal with somebody of a low stature. So he elevated Ephron to give Avraham Avinu somebody to deal with.
Right.
So that's why Ephron originally said, "No, have the field for free." And Avraham Avinu insisted. He said, "No, I want to pay for it." For various reasons, because he wanted to be a valid sale. Not it shouldn't be some
doubt.
Somewhat.
Some doubt.
Yeah, some doubt.
There's something. It shouldn't be left to without stamps.
Exactly.
Sure.
So Avraham Avinu said, "I want to pay for it."
Yeah.
So you would think, they'll make a nominal payment. Like you have just take a shekel, a dollar, something like that.
Yeah.
But he comes up with this astronomical figure. 400 shekels, over socher. Right now that means, it doesn't mean you think 400 shekels nowadays in money. That 400 shekels is like £100, $130, nothing. What is that? But no, 400 shekels over socher is it's like a currency. I think it's non-negotiable or something, or negotiable. I'm not sure what the phrase is. Basically, it was a huge amount of money, ridiculously overpriced, total rip-off. And Avraham Avinu, when he heard that amount, you would think he'd say, "What? What happened to the free bit?" Avraham Avinu said, "No, he paid it off." But the fact is, Ephron was all magnanimous, and "I'll give it to you for free." And in the end, he couldn't see past the offer. Avraham Avinu wanted to pay for it. And then the dollar signs are flicking in in Ephron's eyes, and he basically ripped off Avraham Avinu. There's no other way of discussing about it, because he was one. He promises everything, free, and then when it comes to it, he does nothing for Avraham Avinu.
Yeah, that's the opposite. He rips him off.
In a horrible way.
Yeah. Very good. So let's talk about other commentators on this Mishnah. So Bartanura says about the phrase "to make the Torah fixed," make it permanent. He says, "Such that your main occupation during the day and the night be Torah study, and when you are weary from study, do work, and not that your main occupation be work, and when you are free from work, you involve yourself in Torah." And I found it written, "Make your Torah fixed, such that you are not strict on yourself and lenient on others, or strict on others and lenient on yourself, but rather your Torah should be fixed for yourself like for others, as it is stated in Ezra chapter 7 pasuk 10, since Ezra prepared his heart to expound the Torah of Hashem, and to do it and to teach the children of Israel, as he prepared his heart to do, so too did he teach the children of Israel."
Wow, amazing you mentioned the word keva. I'm reminded of something I heard on a shir by Rav Eli Mansour. He brings a proof from somewhere in Nach that the word keva, apart from meaning to be fixed, could also mean to steal. Make your Torah stolen. That makes sense to you?
Yeah.
Of course not. But he says, he means like this. The Yetzer Hara will come to you and say, okay, you've got this and this and this and this to do in the day. You haven't got time for Torah. How can you be so irresponsible? You've got all these responsibilities. What? You've got no time for Torah. So you're supposed to say to the Yetzer Hara, excuse me, I will steal a bit of time here. I will steal a bit of time here. And you have to literally steal away from the Yetzer Hara and say, this is my time for Torah. Yeah. You have to, because otherwise, if you don't steal it back, then he'll fill your time with. And it also reminds me of Rav Yisrael Salanta. Somebody once came to Rav Yisrael. I've said this many times as well. Somebody came to Rav Yisrael Salanta and said to him, Rabbi, I've only got 10 minutes a day to learn. What shall I learn? Now, he was expecting the answer of like, okay, learn 10 minutes Gemara, or maybe 5 minutes Gemara, 5 minutes of halacha, or something like that. Rav Salanta told him, Musa, 10 minutes of Musa. So the fellow was like, Rabbi, I thought you were going to answer me with like halacha or something. Why Musar? Is that more important than Gemara or Chumash or Mishna? He said, if you learn 10 minutes of Musa every day, you'll soon come to realize that you have more than 10 minutes. You'll have an hour here and an hour there. It'll broaden your mind and say, what am I wasting my time for? I'm spending so much misappropriating so much time on other things. So that's the idea. You have to realize when you fix times for Torah, it's because Torah is central to you. You realize how much of your day it's time management. That's what it is. It's what we learn about time management from our Chachamim. They tell us you really have to make an effort to make sure every moment of your day is appropriated correctly. Otherwise, you're shortfalling yourself.
Yeah,
I think that's what it is.
Very true. Rabbeinu Yonah also commentates on that statement, make your Torah fix. And he says, as they said in the Fathers, according to the Avos to Rav Nosson, chapter 28, verse 10, anyone who makes his Torah study primary and his work secondary is made primary in the world to come. And anyone that makes his Torah study secondary and his work primary will be made secondary in the world to come. This means to say, even though he did not do a sin, but he did not make Torah primary, even if he was fit to be in the Gan Eden, he will be secondary there. So again, it comes down to time management, like you say. Your values change as you learn the Musa. Your values change, and you realise you're correct. You're absolutely correct. So, let's look at what Rambam says about a pleasant countenance. The third thing.
Just to add on one more thing, somebody once came to the Kotzker Rebbe, and I think the Kotzker Rebbe asked him, where are you holding your learning? So the fellow told him, I've learnt Ketubot, Mesechet Ketubot, like several times. Like I made him see on it several times. So the Kotzker Rebbe, who's known to be very sharp, said to him, Mesechet Ketubot has gone through you a few times, but what has it taught you? You've learnt it, but what has it taught you? So there's one thing about fixing time for learning, but you have to don't make your Torah just lip service. The Mesechet has to go through you and influence you.
Yeah. So okay. So what? And this the second saying, which is say little and do much. Omer ma'at v'aseh harbe. Obviously, we have to be people of our words, but also we must be men of action and not talk. Not just talk. We are going to be doers. It's important, a lot of people who talk a lot, they tend to do little. So what does Bartanura say about say little and do much? We find in Avraham, Oliver Shalom, who first said in Genesis, I will get a morsel of bread, and in the end he took tender and good young cow, like we talked about, you said before. He went way beyond what he even planned to do. He planned a loaf of bread, he ended up giving all that we spoke about earlier. and here he says he took a tender and good young cow. What does Rabbeinu Yonah say? He says, when you promise your friend to do something for him, tell him a little and do much for him. And that is the way of an ethical person and a pious person. And we have learned from our father Avraham the same thing he brings, which from Bereshit 18:5, and let me fetch a morsel of bread, and afterwards he took curds and milk and the calf. And another explanation for say little and do much is that it is a lofty virtue. Our rabbis, Oliver Shalom, learnt it from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who only promised us with 2 letters. As it is stated in Bereshit 15:14, I will judge, done, a word which is written only with 2 letters, and delivered them with 27 words, as is stated. Or has any god ventured to go and take for himself one nation from the midst of another?
That's being released from Egypt.
Yeah. And about this, Rabbi Sadia Gaon, Oliver Shalom, said, if in promising our fathers with 2 letters, he did for them many miracles and wonders, with the salvation in the future to come, about which have been written many pages and many manuscripts and many books of promises and many consolations in Yirmiyahu and in Nevi'im, how much more so will it be that his actions will be more wondrous than that which he promised? Our souls know this well, and a person should know and consider the matter, and to put in his heart that there will be a great reward for him because of his promises. This is from Ha'emunot V'Ha'deot, chapter 8, verse 1.
Wow.
And the very last part of the Mishnah, to receive every person with a pleasant countenance. What does Rabbeinu Yonah say? He says that he showed them a happy face, so that the spirit of creations find pleasure from him. Also, Rambam says something quite similar to Rabbeinu Yonah. He says a pleasant countenance, that is when he interacts with the creatures calmly and with pleasant and welcome words. So it's funny that he doesn't say with humans or with people. He says with creatures. He means the whole of creation.
Yeah.
You should be pleasant. Even the animals that you see, you know, they both mention creatures. They could have said people, but perhaps they're enveloping everything in creation. You should be pleasant towards.
Certainly, that will include mankind.
Yeah, of course, mankind, but yeah.
Yeah, but especially the nations. You know, if you walk around with a sullen look on your face, and you don't smile at people who look very austere and stern, it's off-putting. They say that your face is a Rishut HaRabim. It's a public thoroughfare. Why? Yeah. Because you don't see your face.
Exactly, that's exactly true.
Everyone sees your face.
Yes, you should remember that. It's very important. When you smile, you know, you're making other people happy by having a pleasant countenance. It's very, very important. In fact, you know, I remember recalling when we did Hilchot Deot about your father. Your father used to raise the vibration of whatever place he entered, whatever room he entered. When he walked in, he raised the vibration to joy, and people felt happy. After, when he left, you could sense the vibration was changed completely, and that's a great, great gift. So, what does? Let me see what.
It's
Rabbeinu Yonah says about receiving every person with pleasant countenance. He says that he showed them a happy face, so that the spirit of creation finds pleasure from him. Another explanation, and receive, so that he should distance himself from the trait of anger, which is a very bad trait, and conduct himself with the trait of goodwill in such a way that people will be satisfied with him. This is proper and well accepted. About this, Rabbonim, Oliver Shalom, said in the way of ethical teachings, do you want to be liked? Like that which you don't like. As a person cannot accomplish that the people of the world will like him if he does not forego his traits. And if he does not forego his wants for the sake of their wants, he must negate his will for the sake of the will of others. And with this, he will have many friends and guard himself from injuries and people, as they will hate and seek to hurt one who shows them an angry face.
Wow. Incredible. Thank you for mentioning that about my father. It's poignant to finish off here and mention that our fathers grew up in India, and it was not like they were growing up in Iraq with the influence of the Ben Ish Chai. In India, it wasn't a yeshiva society there. It was very simple. People had their traditions, and they followed their traditions implicitly, but they didn't have any advancement there. So I remember one of the last things I remember about my father, alav shalom, was when I actually had a book of Pirkei Avot. It was called As a Bridge to the Waters, or something like that. And I remember my father said, "What is that book?" And I passed it to him, and he was so happy when he saw it was Pirkei Avot.
Wow.
And he said to me, "That's right. I was lending it to a friend of mine." And he said to me, "Why don't you?" He said, "You should lend it to me." He said, "I always wanted to. I heard about that book, Pirkei Avot. I always wanted to read it." He said to me, that was one of the last things that he mentioned to me. So I'm very happy that we're doing this together in memory of our fathers, etc., and our uncles and aunts, because I think it's something for sure that they would have related to, having not been exposed to that in India. Okay, Michael, thank you so much. I'm really enjoying all these commentaries that you're bringing on the Mishnah. It's a wider scope than I think we both expected, and it's a welcome companion to the original Pirkei Avot that I did. So thank you so much, and Bezrat Hashem, we'll see you next time for Mishnah 16.
Thank you.